and welcome to the most magical podcast where we give you tips and advice to how you visit the Disney parks like a pro, helping you to maximise the magic by mastering the planning. My name is Sophie from Most Magical Guides, and usually I have a guest joining me, but this episode is a bit different. I'm going to be doing a solo episode in commemoration of my recent solo trip to Disney World. So today I'm going to give you the lowdown of all of the tips and advice I found out whilst I was out there, because since my last trip 2 years ago, a lot has changed. So I want to give you all of the info and the lowdown. I'm having a vlog series that will be starting very, very soon, so you can see everything I got up to during those 2 weeks that I was out there. But today, I thought, let's give you the nitty-gritty, the stuff that's going to help you get the most out of your Disney World trip. So I thought I would start with the highlights from the trip. And I got to do a lot of things this trip that I'd never done before. And some of them I was like, these are core memories. These enhanced the trip so much, and people need to be doing them. So one of the first things, closing down Hollywood Studios. I had never done this before. I had a meet up whilst I was out there. It was so great to meet everyone. We had the best evening together. And the way to end the evening, we got the final reservation for Ogre's Cantina. Now this is a super, super fun bar. It's in Galaxy's Edge. It's all Star Wars themed. At that time of night, it was all adults in there because it was just before 10 p.m. It was really, really nice. You get 45 minutes in there so you can have your drinks and relax. Then the most amazing thing happens. When we left, the park was empty. We had the entirety of Galaxy's Edge and Hollywood Studios to ourselves. We got the most incredible photographs with the Millennium Falcon with no one else around, and it just felt so magical walking through Galaxy's Edge and being the only people there. And at night when it's lit up and it's so stunning, it was unreal. This was something that will be a memory forever. And then getting to Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railway, photos, no one else there. Like, it's literally incredible. So I cannot recommend enough getting the final reservation for Ogre's Cantina during your trip, because you get this most amazing experience that money cannot buy. Like, you can't get the park to yourself. I mean, you probably can if you had loads of money. But if you don't want to do that, just do this. Get the reservation, have some nice drinks, relax, and then go and get those incredible photos and just those memories. Like, being able to walk around and there's no one there is so special. So that was absolutely a core memory made, something that I will remember forever. And one of the best things I did during my trip, something else that was absolutely incredible, was doing the Happily Ever After dessert party. Now, I love Happily Ever After. I probably watch it on YouTube at least once a week. I'm obsessed. However, I never ever really get to experience it, because when you wait on Main Street or in the hub, every single time, I don't know if I'm just really unlucky, but I feel like this is a lot of people's experience. Every single time I will wait an hour and a half, get my spot, think it's going to be okay. The second it starts, kids on shoulders, I don't see anything. And I miss it every single time. And then the evening, you end on a bad note because you're in a bad mood, you didn't see anything, you waited ages, and it's a nightmare. So this time I was like, I'm going to do a dessert party. I will pay any money so I can enjoy this experience. And oh my God, was it worth it? Now, to me, I wasn't expecting much of the desserts. I was like, really, I'm just paying for the view. And the view was spectacular. You have your own private section in front of the plaza. So it's to the right hand side of the Walt and Mickey statue. Just behind that, there is this grass area that's all like cordoned off, and you can arrive. I got there an hour and a half early. They said you could arrive from 7:30. I got there at 7. They were like, oh, you can go in. And you just sit down, you enjoy your time. Lots of people actually brought food in from like quick service restaurants and ate some dinner whilst they were there. And then, like 10 minutes before the show, you stand up and move towards the barrier. Now what's interesting is in front of you is another sectioned off area, and that is for wheelchair people and for any of their guests that are with them. And that area tends to not be super, super rammed. So what actually happens is you have a lot of space in front of you with there's no one standing, and then you have these people and their guests in front. So because of that, you have a really unobstructed view because you've got no one stood right in front of you. There's a gap. And let me tell you, this view is incredible. You can see absolutely everything perfectly. It's like a nice distance away from the castle so that you can still see all of it without, because you know sometimes if you're a bit too close you miss some bits of the fireworks and stuff because you're too close. This was absolute perfection. You could see all of the projections, you saw Tinkerbell fly over you. It was remarkable. I would do it every single trip now. It was so good. And I actually did the post party. So they do a pre-party and a post party. The pre-party, you have your desserts beforehand, then you join the people in that area. Now what I would say is if you do the pre-party, it was mostly families that did the pre-party because of course after the fireworks it'll be quite late. They want to take the kids back, and I suppose you also don't want to be giving kids loads of sweets at like 10 p.m. So it's a lot of families that did the pre-party, and then for people like me who did the post party, you see the fireworks first and then afterwards you have your desserts. It's so worth it. It was actually nice because I would actually say the majority of people, I would say more than 90% of people doing this dessert party were adults. And I think it makes sense because it is a premium thing. So it costs $100 per person. It does fluctuate throughout the year. So sometimes it's a bit cheaper, sometimes it's a bit more expensive. And I think what happens is, obviously for families, it would be very expensive if you've got multiple people paying $100 each to do this. But I think also for adults that go and they want that full fireworks experience, I find, or at least for me, going as an adult now, there's certain things where I think that I can cut back money on. And there's other things that I'm willing to spend extra on to have the good experience. So for example, like flying premium economy, I'd rather have a comfortable flight and pay a bit more, and then I could cut back on other areas of the trip to save some money. So something like this, I was willing to splurge a bit because I really wanted that amazing fireworks experience. And I think that's why the majority of people there are adults. And it was so good. It was so good. And then afterwards, the desserts, I was so impressed. I thought they're just going to be there and they'll be fine. But really, you're just paying for the view. But I was really impressed. Like, when I'm vegan, I did order a vegan menu and they brought me up a whole plate of things. There was too much. There was way too much. But I had like a chocolate chip banana bread. There was a lemon cake. There was also some gummy sweets. There were some little cookies that I think were Enjoy Life cookies. Then they had some homemade oatmeal chocolate chip cookies. I'm sure there was something else as well. There was so much because everything, you had like two, there was so many things. And it was absolutely delicious. Oh, you got a raspberry sorbet, that was the other thing. And I have to say as well, the drinks on offer were great. So they had an open bar, which was amazing, because when I did the dessert party in Disneyland, you had the option of up to 2 alcoholic drinks per person. This open bar, you could only pick up 2 at a time, that was the rule, but you could have got your money's worth in beer, wine and sparkling wine if you wanted to. They also had a wide selection of non-alcoholic drinks. They of course had the famous pog juice. They have what they call cider. It's basically appetizer. It's just fizzy apple juice. In America, cider is non-alcoholic and hard cider is what we would call cider. But they did have their own version, which was like appetizer. But they had a lot of different soft drinks on offer. And after a really hot day, going back, relaxing, having all these desserts, all these different drinks was amazing. If you don't have allergies or intolerances, it's basically a dessert buffet. There's lots and lots of different desserts on offer. So I was really impressed because I was just thinking that part is just something I'm going to go to because I've paid to go. But I was really impressed. Everything tasted really good. In fact, I took it away with me because I could not eat it all. I had some for breakfast the next morning and it was so good. What I would say is if you are an adult looking to have that full fireworks experience and then you're wanting to have like a nice evening where you can have some sweet treats, some drinks and just have a great time in Magic Kingdom, this is so worth it. I would say if you have families, it's probably not worth it in the sense that because the majority of people in that area are adults, your kids aren't getting a better view. I think people think if you go there, you'll automatically get a good view. But where a lot of people did the pre-party, you turn up maybe 15 minutes before the fireworks. And of course, by that point, it's mostly already packed with people doing the post-party. So I did hear some parents being like, right, when everyone gets up and moves forward, you're going to push past everyone and you're going to get to the front. And it's like, you can't really do that when people have paid $100 to be there. And I know people want the best for their kids, but when everyone has paid and it's kind of an equal playing field, it's not really cool to be like, you know, fighting your way through the crowd and pushing people out the way so they can get to the front. So what I would say is for families, it might not be the best option because you're not going to get a better view per se. And there's also a complete outright ban, no kids on shoulders, nothing like that, which if you're an adult is brilliant, because I'm happy to pay to not have kids on shoulders. But if you're a family, I feel like it could be an expensive experience where you don't get what you're hoping to get out of it. So that's just something to be aware of. But I would say for adults, it was absolutely fantastic. And it's something I will do absolutely every single time I go now. I think it was worth the money. And yeah, just having that view was incredible. However, there was also something else that I did, which I'd never done before. And that is watch the fireworks from behind the castle in Fantasyland. Now, this wasn't something I was planning to do. Interestingly, when I was in Disney World, most of the nights I was in Magic Kingdom were Mickey's Not So Scary Halloween Party nights, so it's shut at 6 p.m. The great thing about this is in the daytime, the queues are significantly shorter because a lot of people, so for example, like a lot of American people only go to Disney World for 3 or 4 days. They are not going to use their Magic Kingdom day if they can't be in there the whole day. So the park's much quieter than usual. So I totally took that to my advantage, and most of my Magic Kingdom days were on the party nights, but it meant I was never in the park in the evening. I obviously had the dessert party, so that was the one day I had a full day in Magic Kingdom. But however, there was another night and I thought, do you know what, I'm going to park hop over into Magic Kingdom so I can go on rides whilst the fireworks are on and see if the queue times are much shorter. Now, spoiler alert, the queue times were not much shorter. When the actual fireworks were on, they were, but in the lead up, I thought, you know, starting 2 hours before the fireworks, people start getting their spots, the ride queue times will start to go down, which did not happen. So that was kind of interesting. And I had a virtual queue for Tron, no sorry, not a virtual queue, a single pass. I'd paid to buy an individual lightning lane for Tron so I could ride it at night. And I knew that was going to be kind of just after the fireworks. And I was like, do you know what? I don't think I'm going to go on any rides during the fireworks. I might just watch them in Fantasyland, because as I was walking through, there was hardly no one there. There was so much space. And I was like, let's just see what it's like. And it turns out it's one of the best things I've ever done. It's literally incredible. Now, of course, you don't see the projections, but the music is played throughout the whole of the land, so you can absolutely hear what's going on. And you get the unique experience of basically being inside the fireworks, because in front of me I had the castle and there were fireworks going off on the castle. Overhead there were fireworks going off, and then behind me there were fireworks going off. So literally it was like a 360-degree experience of the fireworks, and it was one of the best things I've ever done. And I would say, if you've seen the fireworks from Main Street, you've seen it the proper way, maybe you've done the dessert party and you're looking to have a unique experience, definitely do this. It is so good. It's so magical, and it's something I'd never really thought about doing. It just happened to be something that I was in the area for, and I will absolutely be doing it again because it was so good. And like I say, you've got loads of space, you're not crammed in, there's no one around you. You can kind of get this amazing 360-degree fireworks experience. You still hear everything that's going on. I did still see Tinkerbell, however, you don't see the projection. So I would say, to get the full experience, do watch it at least once from the front, but going behind the castle is absolutely like magical. It's one of those, again, core memories that I'm going to have. So I would highly recommend that, and it gives you a really unique perspective, and it's free. You're not having to pay to get a better view. You're just getting this really cool experience, and I feel like it's kind of a hidden gem. I have heard people talk about it, but the fact that there was no one waiting was incredible. It was so cool. Something else that I tried this trip, which was very interesting because we were all keen to see what it's like, was multi-pass and single pass. So of course, early this year, Genie Plus got switched to multi-pass and single pass. Now, single pass is basically just a new name for individual lightning lane. It works exactly the same. Multi-pass is a new paid for version of the previous fast pass system, and there were some things that I picked up whilst I was out there. So I bought it for 3 days whilst I was in Magic Kingdom, twice in Hollywood Studios, and once in Epcot and once in Animal Kingdom to try it out and see, do you need it in all of the parks? How much can you get done? Is it worth the money? Now, I would say at a very, very busy time of year, it would be worthwhile in all of the parks. If it's a quieter time of year, then Epcot, I would say, multipass isn't really worth it, purely because of the tier system. So when you book multipass, you can book 1 tier 1 and 2 tier 2 rides in advance. So 7 days in advance if you're staying on site at Disney World, 3 days in advance if you're staying off site. Another thing to add right now, people outside the US can pre-book, which is something Disney had said it would not be possible, and it was going to put people that are international guests at a massive disadvantage. However, I'm happy to report there is a loophole, and it's actually very, very simple. In the Disney World app, you simply go to your profile and change your country to the United States. You then cancel out the app, turn off the location settings on your phone, and then reopen the app, and you can book. So I am going to be doing a video on YouTube, which is a step-by-step showing you exactly how you can book, and then giving you the best strategy to get the most out of multipass, because during my time I definitely worked out there's certain ways to use it to get the most out of it. So I'm going to do a video all about that, but I thought I'd give a little rundown here. So Epcot, if it's very, very busy, could be helpful. If it's not great because of the tier system. So the rides that you really want to get multipass for are Frozen and Remy. Now, they are both tier 1 along with Soarin'. However, the thing that's interesting about multipass is some rides will sell out in advance. So what I found is I booked for Remy as my tier 1. However, when it came to the day that I could use multipass, Frozen was already sold out. So once I'd scanned into my first ride, there was no option for me to book it. Now, interestingly, the tiers only exist when you're pre-booking. Once you're actually in the park, you can book any ride. However, a lot of tier 1 rides will already be sold out by then, which is why multipass is not really worthwhile if you're buying it on the day. What I would say is good about multipass is before purchasing it, you can select the rides. So you can see which rides are available. So if you were going to buy it for a specific ride and that was sold out, you'd be able to see that before purchasing. However, like I say, if you're buying it on the day, a lot of rides are going to be already sold out. You're not going to get reservations for them, which is why in Epcot it's not worthwhile, because then a lot of the rides that are in tier 2 are rides like Figment, Living with the Land, that typically don't get long queues unless it's a very busy day, which is why if it's very busy in Epcot, it could still be worthwhile. And in fact, during my trip, one of the days that I had multipass, I think at one point Living with the Land was an hour wait, and I was like, what is going on? This never happens. So that sort of day, it was worthwhile having. Otherwise it's not. Same with Animal Kingdom. On a not very busy day, you're not going to need it. The good thing about Animal Kingdom is there's no tiers, so you can just pick any of the rides. Now, what I would say, you should pick Safari and Navi River, and the third one should be the ride that you most want to ride. So it might be Expedition Everest. For me, it was Dinosaur because I knew it was going to be closing soon. And from that, you can have a great day in Animal Kingdom. Again, I had it on a weekend day, and it was really, really busy at Animal Kingdom, so this helped massively. With multipass, I never queued more than 10-15 minutes for anything, and most things were walk on, and this was across all of the parks, so you do save a huge amount of time. And I would also say multipass, whether it's worth it to you or not, depends on how long you're comfortable queuing. So I know people, and they were like, oh, that's a 50-minute wait for Toy Story Mania. That's okay. Whereas I'd be like, I'm never waiting 50 minutes for any ride. So I think it depends on how long you're comfortable waiting. But also, where I've had problems with my foot, I can't stand on the spot for like an hour in a queue. So for me, multipass works out super, super well. Whereas if you're comfortable and expecting most rides to be kind of a 45-hour-long wait, and you don't mind that, multipass won't be worth the money. Whereas if you're someone who would prefer to wait 15 minutes or less, then multipass is absolutely going to be worth it for you. The two parks that it's the best in, of course, are going to be Magic Kingdom and Hollywood Studios, because they also have the most amount of rides included. Now, I would say Hollywood Studios doesn't have a load of things included. However, because Hollywood Studios is the smallest park, but with some of the most popular rides, the queues are always really, really, really long. So it works really well in Hollywood Studios, and having it for 2 days on the trip was brilliant, because it then meant one time I could use my tier 1 on Slinky, and then I had a different day where I could use a tier 1 because Slinky goes really quick, and I was like, that is an absolute must. But some of the other tier 1s are going to sell out, so having it for 2 days worked really, really well for me. And I actually found in Hollywood Studios, if I had just used it even one day, I would have been able to do almost everything included in multipass in that one day. And because I had it 2 days, that happened twice. So it's really, really effective in Hollywood Studios. If you're thinking of only getting it once during your trip, Hollywood Studios is probably the park to do it in, because you can do so much. Interestingly, multipass does include some shows, doesn't include meet and greets with characters like Genie Plus did, but being able to also go to shows and not have to wait ages to get in, you could just walk straight up a few minutes before, was so, so good. Stuff like The Lion King. I went to see The Lion King show in Animal Kingdom, not on a multipass day, just on a normal day, and I got there 40 minutes early, and I was like, okay, the queue's kind of long, but it's fine, it's a big auditorium. I was one of the last person they let in, and it had never even occurred to me that you could be queuing and not get in. I thought they would cut the queue off and go, oh, no more people can come in. That didn't happen. So I was one of the last people to walk in, and then they were like, there's no more space. And there was loads and loads and loads of people outside. Whereas if you have multipass for that, you don't have to worry. You could just turn up a few minutes beforehand and you'll still be allowed in. I would get there a little bit early, because then you go in first to get the pick of seats, which is one of the best things about having multipass for shows. But if you don't want to be wasting time hanging about, you also can just walk in. You don't have to be waiting, which is so good. Magic Kingdom, of course, has the most amount of rides available for multipass, and again, I had it for multiple days just because I knew that was going to be the park you'd get the most out of it. And also, so that I could try out different strategies. So one of the things I wanted to do was Tiana's Bayou Adventure. Now, the only way to ride that currently is either with multipass or a virtual queue. There is no standby. So, of course, that was my pick for 2 of my 3 Magic Kingdom days. However, I found the best strategy was actually when I chose a different tier 1 ride, but got a virtual queue for Tiana, because it meant I could still ride Tiana, but I'd freed up that tier 1. And then what I found most effective was scanning into your first ride. You can then immediately book another experience. Look for which rides are later in the day. Now that sounds silly, because you'd think, well, I want to get on more rides now. However, those rides are going to sell out. So what you need to do is, every time you scan in, look for the rides that have reservations later in the day and book them. And then in the meantime, you can go on the rides that don't get long queues in Magic Kingdom. What will happen is, after you've scanned into 3 or 4, you will have enough reservations for all of the popular rides. So you're going on all of them, it's not a problem. And then you've got one that's going to be freed up for those reservations that are very close to the time that you're there. So it would be stuff like, if you wanted to go on Barnstormer, you could go on it like immediately. So you could book your multipass and go straight on it. And there are a lot of rides where you could do that. So what you need to do is do all of these big rides, get all of those reservations first, and it feels counterproductive because it feels like I'm just getting stuff later and later in the day. But it will get to a tipping point where you've got all of them booked. You've already been on some, you've got some coming up later in the day, and then you're going to have one slot available where you can just be going through the rest of the rides available on multipass really quickly. So that worked so well for me, and I'm so glad I used for multipass. I would absolutely do it again, because again, for me, it's one of those things that I'd rather splurge on that and cut back on things in other areas, because I can't be doing these super long waits. Like with my foot, I have to do a lot of breaks and make sure that I'm having rest. And this was a great way for me to still fit loads into my day, but also give my body what it needed to be comfortable. So for me, it was absolutely worthwhile. But it will depend on the way you visit and how long you think queuing is acceptable. But I would say, if you're thinking of doing it, do book it in advance, because those big rides sell out. And interestingly, something that I was not expecting, single pass, which is formerly known as individual lightning lanes, they sell out in advance. So if you're thinking, let's go, like, we'll see how long the queue is for Tron, because Tron is now a standby queue. The virtual queue is gone. If it's really, really long, we'll buy an individual lightning lane. There's every single chance you will not be able to buy it because it will already be sold out. Now, what I did find is I had already booked some individual lightning lanes in advance. So I'd booked Tron because I wanted to do it at night. When I had booked it, it was still a virtual queue. So, of course, with the virtual queue, you couldn't pick the time slot. So I was like, I'll do an individual lightning lane. And then I also booked for Rise of the Resistance, one of my favourites, and Flight of Passage. I skipped... if you're watching this on YouTube, you will see there is a cat that has walked across the screen. I do apologise, but this is live. But stuff like Seven Dwarfs Mine Train, I was like, do you know what, I'll rope drop it, I'll do whatever, because I'm not going to pay to go on it. However, whilst I was there, that never happened, and I didn't want to miss out, so I decided, do you know what, I'm going to get an individual lightning lane. It was like $11 for Seven Dwarfs Mine Train. Sold out. You could not get it. So luckily for me, I still had a few more days, and I think like 4 or 5 days in advance, there was one later in the trip. So that was good. But on the day, you couldn't, even stuff like Seven Dwarfs Mine Train, you could not get single pass for. So just be aware, if there are rides you're thinking, like, I cannot miss out on this, you might want to book the single pass in advance, because you don't want to risk it, and then it all goes wrong. I would say it was great for me. My first day, I got the virtual queue for Tron. It was the final day that they had the virtual queue. The rest of the trip, the queue tended to always be super, super long. I did see people online, people that didn't like virtual queues, made a big thing about, at one point it was only a 30-minute wait to go on Tron, so it shows you the standby queues. Great. It was a 30-minute wait for maybe 5 minutes, and the rest of the day it was well over an hour. Sometimes I saw it 120 minutes during the trip. So I would say that is a ride where if you don't... there's a second cat incoming, guys. So again, if you watch on YouTube, I hope you're loving the cat content. It's very difficult when you're at home, and they have no concept of that they're not the star of everything. They don't know. So yeah, I would say single pass can be worthwhile for things like Tron, and particularly if you want to ride it at night and you don't want to do those super long queues. I rode it after the fireworks, like I said. After the fireworks, everyone rushes to Tron for it to be their last ride of the night. It was a 120-minute wait. In fact, the queue was so long, it went all the way back to where the sign for Tron is, way past the canopy. It was so long. However, I literally walked straight on with the individual lightning lane, so it's definitely worthwhile. Something that was lucky for me as well, whilst I was there, is that the Rise of Resistance single rider queue popped back up on my final day in Hollywood Studios. So that was a really, really interesting experience. You do miss out on some of the pre-show. So you don't see Rey, you don't go on the transporter, you do end up entering the queue in the Stormtrooper room. Now, my experience, I don't know if they've changed it since, but my experience, they were letting 20 single riders in at a time, and what would happen is once you exit the Stormtrooper room, there's always 2 queues. There's 2 different queues. One was solely now a single rider queue, and the other queue was for the regular queue. So they would let 20 single riders go into that queue at a time. However, because of that, if you were trying to take a photo with the Stormtroopers, they were like, absolutely not, you've got to get in that queue, you're a single rider. So it was interesting. They were like, you are not going to get to have this experience. I don't know if that was just certain cast members, and if you went another time they would allow you to have the photo. But it is worth noting, if you do the single rider Rise of the Resistance, you will miss out on a lot of the pre-show. However, if you've already done it during the trip and you don't mind kind of missing out on some of it, but you just really want to do the ride part again, it's absolutely worthwhile. I waited 25 minutes and it was an 85-minute standby queue, so it cut down a lot of time, and it was just fantastic. I did not think I was going to be able to do it again during my trip, so on that final day to have the single rider pop up and get to do it was so incredible, and it's just one of my all-time favourite rides. So and that's one that I do think single pass is worth it, because it's more like a 25-minute experience rather than just a ride, whereas Tron, you know, it's $20 and it's a minute and a half long. It is very short. However, Tron at night is next level incredible, which was so good. Something else to mention about Tron whilst we're on the topic is I had obviously never ridden it. It was still being built the last time I was there, and I was very nervous about fitting. Would I fit in the seat? But also, if I did fit, would it be super uncomfortable? Because as someone who suffers from motion sickness, when I'm going on a ride for the first time, I can get a bit nervous because I don't know how it's going to make me feel, and I'm preemptively stressing myself out, which doesn't help. Because it's like, now, do I feel sick because of motion sickness, or do I feel sick because I've made myself feel sick through stress? So I was nervous about it, and when you've already got that nervous feeling, lying on your stomach, I thought, oh my god, this is going to be awful. But great news, I managed to fit with no problems whatsoever. In fact, it was kind of roomy. It was absolutely fine for me, no problems. And the thing that is interesting about Tron is there's no rhyme or reason as to who fits and who doesn't. I know people slimmer than me that haven't fitted on Tron, and they've gone in the regular seats at the back, which is great to know. So if you are someone who's worried about fitting, that's an option. You can ask to sit in those seats. If you don't fit, you can sit in those seats. But also, if you're just uncomfortable with the idea of the position, you can also sit in those seats. You can just ask to be there. But I found it very, very spacious. And I actually found it super comfortable. I didn't find that there was pressure on my knees or my stomach, which is surprising. I don't know how they've done it. It was amazing. And I was also worried because obviously you have the back support as well. And if you go on something like Flight of Passage, you are squashed. You're not moving. You're not falling out. You're not going anywhere. You are packed in. Tron, what's great is the back support actually moves. It's flexible. And that was so comfortable. So I was actually kind of, I was wild on Tron, because most people will sit like you're meant to, where you are holding on to the bars, and there are actually two different handlebars. I think that's for two reasons. One, so that kids have one that's closer to them, or maybe for shorter. And I also think it's so that if you hold the very furthest ones away, you are more hunched over, more like you would be if you were riding a motorbike, so you have the authentic experience. If you hold the ones that are closer to you, you're more sat upright, so it can be a bit more comfortable if you're worried about the position. Or there's a third option I found. So if you're crazy like me, I mean, I wish I'd seen myself from the like waiting area where you can watch the people going past, because people must be like, what is happening? Everyone's hunched over, they're on their motorbikes, they're looking really cool. I found out that you can actually kind of sit upright, completely upright. So then what's funny is because you're on your knees, you're kind of like not standing, but kind of standing, if that makes sense. Like if you were standing up on your knees. And then I had my arms out whilst we were like doing the launch. I was like the crow flying through the air. It was literally incredible. It was so good. So I really liked that you didn't feel like squashed or uncomfortable on Tron, and actually you had a lot of different positions you could be in, so you can find one that's most comfortable for you. But yeah, that launch is so amazing. But I have to say, everyone kept saying to me like, oh, it's really disappointing, it's more like a kid's coaster, it's more like a family coaster, it's not that good. It is not. I would like to point out it's definitely a roller coaster, guys. Like, I don't know why everyone's downplaying it. Like, the launch is amazing. It's so fun when you go under the canopy. At night, it's next level because it's all lit up. And then going into the grid itself, and the inside part was great. Another good thing to note at this point is it didn't make me feel motion sick, which is really, really good. I was absolutely fine. However, I think because people have been like, oh, it's like a baby ride, when I got off of it, it was much more intense than I was expecting. So the first time I was like shell shocked, because I was like, this is not a Barnstormer 2.0. Like, this is much more intense than people had led me to believe. But I was like, I don't think I could do Guardians, because that was the big thing. Am I going to do it this trip? Am I not? And after going on Tron, I was like, that bit where you're in the dark and you can't really see the track inside, to me, I was okay with it. But if it was more intense than that, I wouldn't have been comfortable. And with Guardians, the added element of the spinning, going on Tron made me realise there's absolutely no way I could go on Guardians. So I would say if you're motion sick and you are worried about Guardians, there are other rides you can kind of test to see, like, if I can do that, would I be okay on Guardians? So I would say something like, if you went on Rock and Roller Coaster and you were fine, you'd probably be okay on Guardians, because Rock and Roller Coaster is very intense. You go upside down, there's a lot of that going on. And Guardians, you do have the added element of spinning, but it's not like a waltzer. It's more like changing your position so that you can see certain elements during the ride. However, I would say if you go on Tron and you're like, oh, I don't know how I'd feel if I went on something else, I would probably avoid Guardians. Because I feel like, to me, that added element of the movement of kind of spinning, I couldn't have coped. So I did skip Guardians this time. However, I had some friends that were visiting at the same time that I got to meet up with. Lisa and Peter, they went on Guardians at least twice a day. They were obsessed. They loved it. They would, whatever they were doing, they'd have to make sure at some point they were in Epcot so they could go on it. And I absolutely loved that. Everyone I know that hasn't got sick from Guardians have all said it's the best ride they've ever been on, and they absolutely love it. But it does tend to be, it's either the best ride you've ever been on or it made you really sick and ruined your day. And I was like, I don't want to be in that second category. So I've skipped over that. But Tron, I'm obsessed with. Cannot wait to ride it again in the future. I think it's a really good addition because it is something more thrilling in Magic Kingdom. And I think that's what's really key with both Tron and Guardians. They have added thrill rides into parks that lacked them. And I think that really, really gives it an edge. So I think that's really good. And I also appreciate there being a new ride that I can actually go on. And I'm like, I can survive this, it'll be good. But as I've mentioned, it's some of my favourite parts of this trip as well. We're doing meetups. It was so nice to meet so many of you whilst I was there. I had like the official, like we'd planned to all meet up. So it was me, it was Lisa, Peter, and then Sarah and Jin. Jin's been on the podcast before. We finally got to meet in person and we had the best night in Hollywood Studios where we shut down the park. It was so good. I got to meet up with Sarah again later in the trip. And then whilst I was there, I met up with people just out and about, and we spotted each other and it was wonderful. So thank you to everyone that came and said hello and had a chat. It was the best time. And something else that I should want to mention at this point, although it's slightly not Disney, I also got to meet up with Shelby, who had been on the podcast, and we'd talked about that we were going to meet up during this trip and go to Halloween Horror Nights together. And oh my God, was it incredible. Now, I was nervous about going to Halloween Horror Nights because I love horror. I love all things scary, but I do not like haunted houses. And I was like, I don't know how I'm going to cope because these look very, very scary. However, it was one of the best nights. I am like to the point where I'm trying to like rein it in. I'm trying to not make Halloween Horror Nights my entire personality because it was so good. What I would say about Halloween Horror Nights, there were two things that I did that really, really enhanced the experience. I did Scream early and I did the Express Pass. The Express Pass is worth its weight in gold. Yes, it is expensive. However, I think it's worth every penny. And one of the reasons it is expensive, and Shelby pointed this out to me, and it makes absolute sense, but it wasn't until she said it that I was like, oh yeah. The reason it's so expensive is so that it puts people off buying it. And then it ensures that the express queue is short. So we didn't queue more than 15 minutes for any house, and we got to do all 10 houses and all 5 scare zones. We probably could have done the show as well, but there was a massive downpour at one point. Everyone got soaked. We had to sit indoors and have like a meal just to get out of the rain for a while. If that hadn't have happened, I think I probably could have seen the last showing of the show. But it was not a problem. I will do that another time. But we got to do all of the houses, nothing more than a 15-minute wait. Without the express pass, every single house was over an hour wait. So you would have got so little done. And it's just the fact of going into a house, having that like 5-minute experience being scared and then having to stand on the spot for an hour before you can do it again. I think I would have not been able to cope. And with my foot, there's no way I could have done it. So the express was worth its weight in gold. It's the #1 recommendation I would have if you're doing Halloween Horror Nights, particularly if you're going just once during a trip. Get Express. Yes, it's a lot, but it is so worthwhile. I also thought Scream early was great. It meant that from 3 p.m. I could enter the park, so I got to go and do a few things in the park before the event started. And then what happens is about 5 o'clock people start going into the holding areas. We decided we were going to go into the New York area. People that don't have Express Pass, what they will then do is once they get into the holding areas, go and start queuing up for houses. Now, I assumed that's all you could do, but what's great, and this is why when you have someone like Shelby who's a pro, it's so handy, in that area, all of the dining, getting drink shops, everything was open. So she was like, instead of standing on the spot in a queue, because the house won't open till 6, so you can get in a queue at 5, but you always stood on the spot for an hour. She's like, instead, go inside, get a drink, sit down, rest your feet, get ready for the evening. It was incredible. It was so good. And during that hour, the scare zone started to wake up and become alive. So you got to have that experience. And I loved it. I would say if you're not going to do the express, Scream Early is kind of completely necessary, because it means the second the house is open at 6, you can go in, whilst all of the people are still waiting at the gates to the park to enter at 6. You'll be able to get a few houses done. So you'll get more done kind of in that first hour than you will maybe even the rest of the whole night. So if you're not going to do express, Scream Early is 100% necessary. But I found, because I wasn't going to Universal during this trip, being able to go in from 3 p.m. and have a taste of Universal was great. So I really loved that. And it was only about $40. So Scream Early is very, very affordable. I think my ticket for Halloween Horror Nights cost me £68. And I think the express pass was about $120 on top. So $40 versus $120. The $40 option is much more affordable. However, you still will have a lot of queuing later in the evening. Whereas if you want to get everything done, do the express. And I cannot wait for that vlog to come out, because it's going to be a hoot. It's going to be so funny. And I'm also going to be doing a video all about, if you are a nervous person, how are you going to cope, and what is Halloween Horror Nights like? Because I was that person, and I have to say I absolutely loved it. Some of the other things that were amazing, I got to see Phantasmic for the first time. I don't know how it hasn't happened. I know the past couple of times when I was there in 2022, it still hadn't opened post-pandemic. And then when I was in Disneyland, they'd had the fire, so I didn't get to sit there either. Absolutely loved it. I love that it's a really unique show, really different, iconic music, so uplifting. But also, can we talk about how top tier it is to have a nighttime show where you are sat down? Because at the end of a long Disney day, being able to watch the nighttime show sat down and resting your feet is the most amazing thing ever. And second of all, it means everyone can see. And I'm like, we need more of this. It's brilliant. So everything about Phantasmic, I cannot rate it enough. I loved it. I'm so glad I got to see it on my final night as well. Me and Sarah went and we had an amazing time, and yeah, it was absolutely magical. And of course, first time on Tiana's Bio Adventure as well, and I loved it. I am someone who is a big fan of Princess and the Frog anyway, but I thought it was such a joyful ride. I loved the storyline. I loved that you had so much of the iconic music from the film in it. I think the reason people poo-poo it is because they loved Splash Mountain. And it is hard, if you really loved that ride, for it to be rethemed, it's always going to be a hard sell. I think if you're being objective, no one can say it's a bad ride. It's great, it's so uplifting. Of course, it's the exact same ride, so if you love Splash Mountain as a ride, you're going to love this. But I thought the storyline was so cute too, so I absolutely loved that. I would say though, every time I rode it, I had back row, either by chance or because I requested it, because the first 2 or 3 rows get soaked. Now, I've been on Splash Mountain front row, and I got wet for sure, but not to the point where all of your clothes were stuck to you, whereas Tiana's Bio Adventure, people are getting drenched. So I would say, if you don't want that, request the back row, because you still get wet, but it's a comfortable wet, not a, oh my God, I'm going to be soaked for hours wet, which is so funny. But, something else that I wanted to highlight whilst we're doing the podcast, because I'm trying to give the tips and the advice, is Tron particularly, you do get a ride photo. And if you're coming from the UK and you get photo pass included in your trip, brilliant, you get all your ride photos. Every single time mine didn't show up, and a lot of people have this problem. For whatever reason, that system isn't quite working well. So what I always did is, before going on Tron, check the time, and then that way you can go to the photo pass booths, which they have at the front of all of the parks, and you go to any of them. You don't have to be at the one in Hollywood Studios. You can go to any of the photo pass booths and say, I was on Tron around this time, can we film my photo? And they will be able to go through and find you and put it on your account so that you have it. And that's the same if you have any photos that are missing, whether it be ride photos or ones you've had taken with photographers. If you know roughly the time, and then they'll also ask you stuff like, what were you wearing? So if you have any photographs of you from that day, you can show them what you're wearing. With me, it was lucky on Tron. Every single time I went on Tron, I was arms up on the launch. So that was much easier to spot myself, because not many people do that. So when you're scrolling through all the photographs, you could easily just be looking for arms up, and that made you distinctive. So that was really good to know, because I thought, oh no, I've never been on tour, I'm not going to have my photograph. But you absolutely can just go to the photo pass people, and it's super easy and quick, which is good. Something else that I wanted to touch upon is I did 2 tours this time that I've never done before. I did Caring for Giants and Behind the Scenes. Now, what I would say, the backstage tours at Disney are always incredible because you learn so much, but some of them can be quite pricey. However, both of these cost $30 each. They're an hour long, and I enjoyed both of them. I would say if you like living with the land, you will love Behind the Scenes because you get to actually go inside the greenhouses. Something that was really cool is Behind the Scenes, you can actually film and photograph in there, which most backstage tours is completely forbidden, you can't do that. But you got to learn so much about the really innovative ways Disney are growing produce and all the things that they're doing to be more sustainable. And I found it so interesting. There was also this amazing, huge, like Mickey-shaped kind of topiary that on the ride you can't see because it's kind of like sneakily hidden. But if you are on the tour, you get to have a photo with it. It was great. You also got to try the most delicious cucumber I've ever had that they were growing there. It was so good. The one thing I would say, and a lot of people have asked me about this, is they do go into the fish segment, and as a vegan, that is always the part of the ride I've never liked because it kind of doesn't fit the ethos of the ride of kind of like, let's be more environmentally conscious, let's be less harmful when we're trying to feed the world, but then here's some fish we're going to kill. It's always sat uncomfortably with me. In the tour, you do go into that section. You're not there for very long. They do give people the option to feed the fish. I didn't want to feed the fish, so I was allowed to just stand off to the side. Something that I did like, I mean, I didn't like it because I don't, you know, it's not what I agree with. However, what I did appreciate was that the tour guide did tell people, like, the food we feed them has to be a certain quality because these animals will be killed and they have to be restaurant quality to be served to people. So I did like the fact that they did at least acknowledge and address that these animals were going to be killed. And there were kids on the tour, so I thought it was quite good that, you know, they were actually being told this is where food comes from. These fish aren't just here for show and to be a fun part of the ride. Or I know that they're part of the aquaculture when they're growing the plants as well. They do use the fish for that. But I thought it was good that she did acknowledge the fact that Disney are going to kill these animals and this is why. So I thought at least it kind of... they're not denying what's happening, and it maybe with some people they will kind of notice the connection between these animals and what they eat. However, obviously as a vegan it's not great. But it was a very short part of the tour, and like I said, I did appreciate that they were being upfront. Something I loved that I would highly recommend was Caring for Giants at Animal Kingdom. This is a backstage tour where you get to see the elephants, and what was really nice about this tour is they do tell you in advance that because the elephants are free roaming, there is a chance you might not see any elephants during the tour. You'll still get all of the information and get to see the backstage area, but you know, you might not see elephants. Now, we were lucky that we did see elephants. I have to say the guide Logan was amazing. Like, he had so much information but also a great personality, and it was for me really helpful because ultimately Animal Kingdom is a zoo. You could of course go to Animal Kingdom and never see any animals because they are put in a way that it is possible to kind of avoid them. But again, it was good that they did address the fact that yes, we are a zoo, but then they also really talked about the ways that they care for the giants, the elephants, but also how they put their well-being first. And that was actually really comforting to hear. And they had something which I thought was really interesting, where they were saying that with the elephants, they give them edible glitter, this different colours, so that when the elephants poop, they can see which poop belongs to which elephant, and from that they can monitor stuff like, of course, their health, but also their well-being. So they'll check cortisol levels to see if they're stressed, stuff like that. And then they can, do we need to do more enrichment? Like, what can we do to help this elephant feel less stressed? Is there something going on in the herd? And I thought that was brilliant because it really showed that the level that they are going to kind of look after the animals. And they were also talking about how they're a hands-off, like a like they don't go into the enclosures and touch the animals. So they were saying elephants respond really well to food, and I'm like, same, totally makes sense. Like, I feel that in my soul. So they were saying they will train them with noise and food rewards, so that they will go into a certain part of the enclosure where there's bars, and then say they need to check their feet. They will train them so they put their foot up to the bar so that they can look, and then they can check over the elephants that way. So they say that, you know, the keepers aren't going into their enclosures, that they're not used to kind of like humans doing that. And I thought that was, again, really, really good, that it is an unnatural environment, but they're trying to make it as hands-off as possible. And the fact that they do have a lot of area to roam, it was just so interesting, and that was brilliant. That was definitely a highlight of the trip. And I would say every backstage tour I've ever done has been amazing, but I really thought that was fantastic. So if you do like animals, or you'd like to know more about how they look after the animals, for $30 it's fantastic. And you got to go to a backstage area where you could see the jeeps from the safari, but you were like on the other side of the enclosure, so you could kind of see the animals that way. And yeah, it was so interesting. So I'd highly recommend that. I wanted to talk about some of the disappointments, because there are a few, but luckily they're not really disappointments. When you say disappointment in the context of a Disney trip, it's not really a disappointment because everything is amazing. But Primark, I was so excited. I'm like the world's biggest Primark fan. People, whenever they're like, oh, where did you get that from? It's always Primark. Obsessed with Primark. I've never gone into Primark and not bought something. I was so excited when before my trip they said there's going to be a Primark opening in Orlando. It was rubbish. It was terrible. It was absolutely not worthwhile the trip. It's in Florida Mall, which is more closer to Universal. So it's about a 30-minute drive away from Disney World. They do talk about they've got a whole second floor with Disney products. Whilst technically that is true, the Disney products are on the second floor, the second floor does not cover the entire shop. It's only a tiny portion. So you kind of go up some escalators, and then there's a little second floor, like a mezzanine sort of thing, that has Disney products in. It's all the same stuff you can get in the UK, but a much smaller collection. So my local Primark has more Disney stuff than this Primark does, which was such a shame. I would say 60% of it was kids' clothing. They also had a lot of like nightwear, loads of Stitch. I know you can't move for Stitch in Primark, and it's exactly the same there. So if you like Stitch, great. If you're not such a fan, there's less there. Very little adult clothing, which is what I was really looking for. And I was also keen to see if they had any Disney World branded stuff. So obviously they can't, you know, they would have to have franchised stuff that they're licensed to use. But I was like, oh, will they have anything that relates to Disney World? They don't. I also thought, will they have anything that will be useful? So maybe like autograph books or bubble ones where you could get them they're in Primark much cheaper and then take them to the parks. They don't do that either. It's literally the same stuff you can buy here. It is more expensive because obviously they're importing it over from Europe. So I would say it's absolutely not worthwhile visiting. If you are going to go to Florida Mall because you want to see the whole mall, get some food there, absolutely pop in, see what you think. If you're making a trip specific, it's absolutely not worthwhile. Like, you're not going to find anything new. It's going to be a smaller range than you would find in your local Primark. It's going to be much more expensive, and it's really disappointing. So that was the big disappointment of the trip. Also the outlets this time. I went to Vineland's outlet, the premium outlet, and I went to the character warehouse, the Disney character warehouse. It was the busiest I've ever seen it. So I got there half an hour before it opened. And then once it actually opened, I still had to queue an extra 15-20 minutes to get in. However, that was probably short. Like later in the day, I have heard it get up to an hour queue to get in. And the stuff was okay. I would say all of the good stuff was clothing, but they only had extra small. So no one was picking it up because it was too small for anyone. So if you are extra small, you are going to have a field day because there's going to be loads of great clothing in there for you. But most people, there wasn't much in there. So I ended up getting, I think, one t-shirt, and I did get, in Galaxy's Edge, they have these like plushes that look like kind of like retro old school toys, and they have them with different characters, and I got one for 99 cents, and I was like, I'm not turning that down, I'll take that with me. So that was good, but overall incredibly disappointing. Hardly nothing that I bought. So very different to when I've visited before. I do think it's hit or miss. I think sometimes you'll go there and there'll be loads of things, sometimes there'll be nothing. But I would say that outlets overall are just not good value anymore. I didn't go in loads of shops, but the one shop I was very excited to go in was Crocs. Their offer was buy one pair, get a second pair 25% off, which I don't think is a good offer in general. But also the Crocs are really, really expensive. So the Crocs themselves cost $72, something like that, without tax, for one pair of Crocs. And then you would get the second pair with 25% off. However, in the UK, I've never paid more than like £35-40 for Crocs in general. So I was like, they're so much more expensive than they would be in the UK. So obviously did not buy anything in there. And again, a lot of the shops, that was what the offer was. It was like buy one pair, get a certain percentage off the second pair. So it's definitely not a good offer unless there's something really specific you're going for and you want more than one of it. So therefore you can save some money that way. The outlets just aren't great these days, which is such a shame because they used to be so iconic. So that was kind of a letdown. Something that's a weird disappointment is the aircon was turned down. Now, admittedly, it wasn't like you were out in the roasting hot heat, which I have to say, this trip was the hottest I've ever known September. It was absolutely wild how hot it was. So it wasn't like you'd go into a building, you'd be like, oh my God, it's hot in here. It was cooler in there. You definitely felt the effects, but it's significantly not as cold as it used to be. You'd go into buildings and you'd be like, I need a coat, I'm so cold. So in some ways it's good because it's not so extreme, but I would say there were some times where you were like, I wish it was cooler in these buildings. So that was interesting, and I had heard people say that. I don't know if it's the cost of living crisis and Disney saving some money that way, but you definitely did notice it. But most of the times it wasn't detrimental. But there were occasional times when you were like, I'd like it to be a little bit cooler. Something else that was a bit of a disappointment during this trip, which I've never experienced in a Disney park before, and never in Disney World, and I don't know if it's a new thing or if I was just unlucky, was parents narrating the entirety of shows or rides to their kids. And the problem with that is obviously it really takes away from the experience for everyone else. We famously know that a lot of people have started like narrating Haunted Mansion because they've learnt the script. And again, that's kind of really frowned upon because obviously you're ruining the experience for people that are there. And maybe it's their first time, they've never been on this ride, and having someone talk over the top was very distracting. However, the parents, they weren't doing that. They were just literally telling their kids everything that was happening. And when we went to see Fantasmic, luckily it was the second time I was seeing Fantasmic, so I had already seen it. But the parent and child behind us, the kid was very, very nervous. They didn't want to see the show. They were kind of scared. I think they'd seen it before because they were talking about kind of like the nightmare scene. And they did not want to see it. And the parent, instead of going, let's skip it and we'll do it when they're a bit older, maybe see if they like it again in the future, she decided what she was going to do is make the child watch the show, but instead she was going to narrate the whole thing by telling the kid what was going to happen next. Now, if you'd never seen that show, she would have ruined the entirety for you because there was no surprises, no nothing. And also, just hearing someone talk non-stop over the top is irritating in general. Like, I just want to be able to watch and enjoy and soak it up. So I don't know why this has become a thing. I hope it dies out. I hope people stop doing it because, you know, decades and decades of kids have gone to Disney and been able to follow along with things quite easily. You don't need to tell them step by step what's happening. They can see, they know what's happening. So that was the one other disappointment because I was like, what's this happening? Don't do this, guys. It's weird. So some of the other things I want to talk about is we've kind of touched upon multipass. I'm going to do this video. Definitely go and watch that to find the best strategy and also see the step-by-step how to do it. So I thought I would kind of go over some of the other things that I found, maybe give like a little review of things whilst I was there. So one of the things was the hotel. I was at All Star Music. This is a value resort. It's one of the cheapest hotels in Disney World. In fact, often it ties being the cheapest with All Star Sports. I was on a solo trip and it's fantastic. It's everything you need. It's the most affordable. It's got all the amenities you could need. It's considered like a 2-star hotel, but it's definitely much nicer than that. The rooms are really comfortable. You do have 2 double beds, but basically one folds up into the wall, so you have a kind of table and chair set instead when it's folded up, which is great because it gives you more space in the room. So if you're a couple or a solo traveller, that's brilliant. However, if there are more of you, you know you've got that extra bed. What I like about these resorts is they're quite small in size. So my room was in a block that was one of the furthest away, and I was also right at the end of the corridor. However, to get to the restaurant and the reception was maybe a 5-minute walk. So that would also be handy, because if you're getting the buses, it would still only be a 5-minute walk, which is so good, because some of the resorts at Disney World are huge, and getting from the bus stop to your room can take 15 minutes. So knowing that this is quite small was fantastic. Now, I had car hire this time, and what was great is there's tons and tons of parking, so I was always able to park right next to my building and just go straight to my room, which was so good. I thought the restaurant was really good. I ate there a couple of times, and they do have basic things like pizzas and burgers, but they also have more interesting options. And they also had stuff like, when I did order a burger, it was like a Korean style burger. It wasn't just a basic burger. So I actually thought the food was really, really good, because again, for a value resort, I thought it would be kind of basic, but it wasn't. So I can't recommend All Star Music enough. I think it's super comfortable. It was quiet. I didn't hear any noise at all during the whole trip from anyone else. It was a great size. You could easily get around. It was safe. Like, I cannot recommend All Stars enough. I would say previously I've stayed at All Stars before, and I've also stayed at Animal Kingdom Lodge. I did a split stay during a trip. Animal Kingdom Lodge, what I did when I was there is I just stayed at the hotel. I ate in all of the restaurants, I went to the pool, I did like some of the experiences, didn't leave the hotel. If you're in the parks all the time, I don't think it's necessarily worthwhile upgrading if there's such a big jump in the cost, because you're not going to get the full experience of the amenities. And something that's interesting is Animal Kingdom Lodge was much bigger to get around, so it would take longer to get to your room, and also it's always noisy. So yeah, sometimes the value resorts can kind of be the one. If you're going to be in the parks a lot, I definitely think they're worthwhile. If you aren't going to have your own car, then somewhere like Pop, which is also a value resort, Pop Century, you have the added benefit of the Skyliner. So not only do you have buses, you also have the Skyliner, and for a value resort, that's amazing. So I think the value resorts are where it's at. If you're wanting places to be comfortable, have everything you need, the free transportation, but the most affordable, they are worthwhile. And for a solo travel, I think they're perfect. I also want to touch upon the car hire itself. So I hired a car with Hertz this time. I'd hired a car with Hertz my previous trip as well. Up until that point, I'd always used Alamo. Love Alamo, never had a bad experience. Hertz last time, amazing experience, fine. This time, they had switched from allowing you to select any car from a certain row yourself to choosing a car for you. But this is where the problem started. So they had randomly given me some sort of sports car, which in some ways it was obviously nice because it's kind of like an upgrade. However, as a solo person on my own, it was completely impractical because there was no boot. Like, there was a space for like one case maybe, but it was really hard to get the case in. So then you had to use the back seat, but it was one of those, it's only a 2 doors, you have to pull the seats down. And also, I am a very short person. However, the problem with this car was if you brought the seat forward, it also went up. There was no option to just do forward. So as soon as I would get the seat close enough to touch the pedals, I was then, like, my legs are squashed against the steering wheel, you can't drive. So I had to get all of the stuff back out of the awkward car, go back to the desk and be like, look, I don't think this car's practical. So then they made me go back to show them why it wasn't practical. And then they were like, oh, okay, that makes sense. So then they swapped me to a second car. They then said to me, just go to this road, choose any car you want. I moved all of my bags, put them in the second car, tried to use the second car, and the key fob wasn't working. I think the battery was running out on it. So then I had to go back to the office to be like, look, this one's not working, so can we switch again? So then I had to switch for a third time to another car. By this point, this had taken over an hour to sort. It was roasting hot because obviously that car park is outside, so you can't, there's no aircon. I was just melting. It was absolutely roasting hot. And it was late at night. I think my flight landed about 7:30 at night, so this was all taking a long, long time. I think I didn't leave the airport till gone 9 p.m. in the end. And it was just not the one. I did actually see a lot of people having to go back to the desk because they'd been assigned a car, and when they'd got to the car, there was no key fob in there, so they couldn't drive it, and there seemed to be a lot of problems. So if that's Hertz's new policy, if they will assign you a car, I don't think I'd go with Hertz again. I think I would go back to Alamo. It is a bit more expensive, but maybe Alamo are also doing that. Do let me know if you've used Alamo recently, if they're now assigning you a car. But that was a hassle. However, I have to say, ever since then, it was a dream. The car was really, really great to drive. It was kind of actually a new car that I was given. It was super, super comfortable, really easy to navigate how to use. I also set up Android Auto, because in the car itself it has one of those screens. Of course, I think with Hertz you can pay for sat-nav and they will activate it. However, if you have an Android phone, or they also had an iPhone Apple version, you could just connect your phone and then you can use the sat-nav on the actual console, which is fantastic. But absolutely love the car. Like, that was brilliant, and I'm glad that we had like the hiccup at the start, but the rest of the trip it was absolutely perfect. Something that I would say is I got the visitors toll pass as well. So once you've gone to the car rental area and got your paperwork, there are little booths where you can scan a QR code and they will give you a little tag to hang on your mirror. And this gets you up to 80% off of toll roads, which is fantastic. So I think when you set it up on the app, it's like a $10 charge they take. And then from that, they take the toll. So if you don't use many tolls, at the end of the trip, you'll get a refund a few days after you return. If you've spent a bit more, a few days later, they'll do an extra charge onto your, well, not your phone, your account on your app sort of thing on the phone. And loved it. The only thing I would say is when I did it before, you literally just hung it up and went. This time what you're meant to do, because it's switched to kind of an app now, you're supposed to then put the registration number of the car into the app before driving off. I did not realise this. So I got to the hotel and I had an email from them just to say, oh, just to remember you have to put the registration number in. So that was super, super easy, and I'm so glad that they did send you the reminder. And something else I wanted to point out is fuel. Fuel is incredibly cheap in the US. During the 2 weeks, I didn't actually have to fill up the car until the final day. I ended up adding, by that point it was like right down the bottom, it needed to be topped up, but I spent less than $40 to do a full tank of gas. What I would do is, if you are driving to MCO from Disney World, there are 2 exits before the airport, one at exit 8 and one at exit 9, where there are gas stations. They are significantly cheaper than the gas stations on site at the airport, and they're literally 1 exit away from the airport. So I would absolutely do that. You save so much money doing that. And it's so convenient because you literally just pull off, pop in, get back, 1 exit, and you're at the airport. So yeah, I love having a car. I feel like, because I've had a car a few times now, I couldn't do it any other way. And I think one of the great things about staying on site at Disney World is you do have the free transportation, so you can get everywhere. But the car is just so convenient, and being on your own schedule is amazing. And particularly like some days when it's roasting hot or it's raining and you're seeing people waiting at the bus stops. Like in the daytime, the buses are supposed to run every 20 minutes. I'm sure they're probably a bit more frequent than that. But the idea of standing for like 20 minutes when your feet are hurting in the roasting sun, can't do it. Whereas when you're in your car and it's nice and air conditioned, and every single place on property was only a 15-minute drive maximum. So it's so handy. And as I love to take an afternoon break, being able to pop back every single day, and you know, it's a 15-minute drive, I'm at my hotel, and then 15 minutes to get back to the parks. It was brilliant. So I'm spoiled, and I don't think I could visit without a car. I absolutely love it. Something else I used whilst I was over there was, I'm with EE, and they have data roam, which you can add on to your account. It's a monthly charge, so do remember to take it off when you get back. It costs £25, but you can basically then use your data, minutes, and text allowance that you have with your contract. So I used it for data the whole time whilst I was out there. I used it when I was driving for data, and also in the parks, because the Wi-Fi can be quite patchy, and where you're needing to use your phone a lot when it comes to multipass or mobile ordering or looking up ride wait time, stuff like that, using mobile data helps a lot. So if you have the option to do something like that, I would do it. If I hadn't have added the package on for £25, I think it was something like £8 a day if you used it. And then you also had like a really low data allowance. So I would absolutely do that again, because it just, the whole trip I got to use data. And even though I had the data on for almost 2 weeks solid, I hardly used it. Like, my allowance was still, I still had loads left. It wasn't like I was going to go over. So that was really, really, really handy. I'd also say there were some must pack items that I had, so I thought I'd touch upon them. Handheld fan, lifesaver. Honestly, I've got this handheld fan. It's got 3 settings, 3 different speeds. I got it on Amazon. It was about £14-15. It was so helpful because, like I say, this trip was the hottest I've ever known Florida. It was unreal, and you could see everyone was struggling, even local people. And being able to like have this fan, it made such a difference. So for the sake of £15, make sure you get one and take it with you. It is a lifesaver. I would also say a UV umbrella is great because they kind of have a wide canopy. So when it's the torrential rain, an umbrella I prefer over a poncho, just because ponchos are so hot. And where it was already so hot, there's no way I could have put a poncho on top. Whereas with the umbrella, you had coverage. And then also, if it's really sunny, you can use it and it bounces the UV rays away from you and it keeps you cool. So a UV umbrella is also an amazing option. Power bank, you're going to need a power bank. As I say, you're using your phone a lot. And it's not, I wouldn't say it's detrimental because when you're using it for a minute at a time. So it's not like you're spending hours on your phone, but because you are checking things or booking things and mobile ordering things, you will use your phone. And especially like if you're taking photographs and videos as well, you're going to run out of battery. So if you have a little power bank with you, you're not having to worry. Perfect, you're all ready to go. Something I found super helpful is drinks with electrolytes, because water was not enough. Like, you could be drinking endless amounts of water and you were still ending up with a headache, but the second you started having drinks that had electrolytes in them, you suddenly felt much better. So because it is so hot, don't rely on just water. Also get some like Powerade, Gatorade, or you can even get sachets that you can add to drinks that have electrolytes in. But yeah, I just went to the supermarket. On my first day, I took a suitcase with me. I think it was like 34 bottles of water. I got some Powerade and I got some vitamin water. And then I was sorted for the trip, which was amazing. I also really find compression socks helpful for overnight. So where I've had problems with my feet, and just where you're walking a lot, and then when you're not walking, you're standing. So you're on your feet all day unless you take breaks. And these compression socks, what they do is overnight, they take down any swelling or soreness you have in your feet. And every single day I would wake up and my feet were like new. So 100% they are absolutely incredible, and they're very cheap as well. I think they were less than £10 and you got like 2 pairs. They're absolutely worthwhile. Also multiple pairs of shoes. Like, one of the things I found most helpful was switching shoes, because you could have the comfiest shoes in the world, but if you're wearing them day after day after day, your feet get fatigued in them. So what I would always do is switch shoes every single day. So I actually took 5 pairs with me, but there were 3 pairs that I ended up wearing the most. So I had 1 pair of trainers, a pair of Crocs, and a pair of Teva sandals. Now, my Teva sandals I always had with me because if it rains, they're perfect. You can get wet, they dry really quickly, and they also strap to your feet so you're not sliding around. Trainers in the rain, forget about it. They take days to dry, it's awful. So they were really, really handy to have with me. But being able to switch between different shoes made such a difference. Also Crocs, if you're taking Crocs, you've got to wear socks with them, otherwise you will get blisters. And what I also did is I wore some blister socks. So I got them in Primark, good old Primark, and basically it's like a sock within a sock. It's really interesting. And they helped so much, because I have worn Crocs before when I was in Disneyland, and even though I was wearing like running socks where they have like more padding in certain parts of your foot, I still got some blisters. The blister socks, no blisters whatsoever at all during the trip with any of my shoes. So highly recommend them. I think they're about £4 or £5 for 3 pairs in Primark, so can't go wrong. Absolutely incredible. I would also make sure you have some medicine with you. So whilst I was out there, I did get sick. I got quite a heavy cold. Luckily with me, I had paracetamol with me. I had Sudafed. I was like the Red Cross. I had everything. I was prepared. But what was good is I had enough Sudafed to tide me over until I could go to a pharmacy. And then I did get some medication. Now, I have to say, the flu and cold remedies in the US are so much better than here. Even after 1 dose, I felt significantly better. And after like a day of taking it, I was probably 70% better. in the UK, if I get a cold, I'm ill for like 2 or 3 weeks. It's not going anywhere. So it is definitely worthwhile grabbing some flu or cold medicine whilst you're out there, and then you've got it on standby if you ever need it, or you can bring it home with you if you get ill here, because it's so much more effective. So I would say come prepared just in case, because there's nothing worse than if you start to feel ill, you've got a headache or you get a cold or something, and you have nothing with you, and then you're thinking, oh my God, I've got to get to a pharmacy or find medicine somewhere. There's nothing worse than scrambling. So take some stuff with you, but there are pharmacies everywhere, and even in your resort shops, they will have medicines or things you might have forgotten, like toothpaste, available. And in all of the parks, they do have first aid. So if you needed painkillers or motion sickness remedies, things like that, they will be able to offer them there, plasters, things like that. So if you are caught short, head to first aid or your hotel shop. But the pharmacies in America are amazing, and their remedies are so much better than ours, and I'm kind of kicking myself for not bringing stuff back. Like, I had a few tablets left over, but I'm like, we need it here. Why is our medicine so rubbish? So that was amazing. But the final thing I want to touch upon, because I'm very aware this is very long, is dining, because I got to have some new restaurants I'd never been to that were amazing. I had some restaurants that I was super excited to go back to, which were terrible. And I thought I'd give a little rundown of some of the best and worst food I had. So some of the best, Shikisai. This is a Japanese restaurant in Epcot. It's kind of newish. It has been there over a year now, but I was desperate to visit this, and oh my gosh, it did not disappoint. The food is kind of more like tapas style, so it's kind of small plates. They do have some big plates if you wanted, or ramen, things like that. But I got a mixture of small plates, and it was some of the best food I've ever had in any Disney park in the world. Like, it was absolutely incredible, and the service was next level. Like, when you arrive, the host like clinks 2 sticks together, and then everyone turns to greet you. And then my server could not have been nicer, more friendly. Because I'm vegan and some of the dishes would need to be modified, the manager also came to talk to me so that he would oversee it all to make sure that I was getting dishes that I could have. I was obsessed. I will absolutely be going back there immediately. And there was actually loads of options that could be modified to be vegan. So I want to go back because there's more things for me to try as well. But they specifically have a tomato salad, which is absolutely unreal. It's so, so good. So Shikisai, if you like Japanese food, make sure you get a reservation there because it's so good. Somewhere that I had never been before was Tusker House. I don't know how I haven't been there, but it was incredible. I went for breakfast. The food is so good, and in fact the food is very, very similar to Boma. And I would actually say, if you're not staying at Animal Kingdom Lodge, don't even bother going to Boma. Just go to Tusker House instead, because it's inside the park, and it's the added benefit of being a character dining meal. And I got to meet all of the characters more than once. The interactions were great, they weren't rushed, and I can't rave about Tusker House enough. It's probably one of the best character dining meals I've been to at Disney World. I would say that and Topolino's are the 2 you should head to, because they both have amazing food, amazing settings, and incredible interactions that aren't rushed. But cannot big that up enough. And the fact that it's in a park as well, because normally a character dining meal in a park can be quite chaotic because they're so popular. But this one was amazing. And like I say, that food, unreal. One of the best breakfasts I had during the trip. So definitely go there. Also, Garden Grill was great. I went there for breakfast as well. If you're looking for more familiar food, because Tusker House does have kind of like an African influence, and it's delicious. It's unbelievable. If you're looking for more like a traditional American style breakfast, Garden Grill is great. You kind of get served family style, but you can order more of the things you like the most. And you get the added benefit of being in a revolving restaurant that goes inside, living with the land, as well as meeting characters. And again, amazing. I met all the characters more than once. It was so cool being inside, living in the land. And because it revolves so slowly, you don't even really realise you're moving. And then, like, I'd meet a character and sit down and you'd be in a completely different location. Like, it was amazing. And again, like, the food was really, really good. It's something that most people are going to really enjoy. So that is a great character dining meal. Also, Blaze Pizza. Can't rave about it enough. Unbelievably cheap. Really, really good food. I went there twice during this trip. I had a personal pizza that was like $12. You can have as many toppings as you want. They even had stuff like vegan cheese, vegan chorizo, no extra cost. unbelievable. Second time I went, it was $12 and I got half a pizza, and then I also got a vegan cheesy bread, which was huge, and it was $12, and I was like, I can't get over the prices. Like, it's so unbelievably cheap. And one of the best meals you will have at a quick service restaurant. Highly recommend Blaze. I also obviously love Sartori Canteen. You can never ever like go wrong there, and I do think it's probably the best quick service restaurant in the whole of Disney World. Like, make sure you go there. Really unique dishes, but unbelievably tasty. Can't go wrong. This time I went to the Plaza for the very first time. And what was interesting is I had a 5:30 reservation, and the park shut at 6 for the Halloween party. And they, again, I thought, oh, maybe it'll be a bit rushed because they're trying to get you out, because I wasn't going to the Halloween party that night. And they didn't. They let you enjoy your meal. I had the iconic dark chocolate banana bread pudding, which is unreal. The hype is real. It's so delicious. It was so good. And then after I'd finished my meal, as I was kind of wrapping up, they had a cast member come through, and anyone that was in the restaurant that wasn't going to the Halloween party was given a wristband to let you know that they were a dining guest. And they said that's so that when you go outside and leave the restaurant, security aren't going to like rush you out if you need to go to the restroom or anything like that, because they'll know that you've dined. And I thought that was really, really great, because it manages to separate party guests from non-party guests, but it also means you're not kind of being marched out the park. And that was fantastic, but the food was really good. And again, I think it's kind of one of those hidden gems. Everyone, when they go to Magic Kingdom, goes for either Be Our Guest or Cinderella's Royal Table for the experience. But I actually think the two best restaurants are probably Plaza and Jungle Navigation Skipper Canteen. They are both really, really good options and kind of a bit overlooked in Magic Kingdom. So I would highly recommend them. I would say the ones that were kind of disappointing this time were Boma. I went for breakfast. I was so excited. The food was great. You can never ever go wrong with the food at Boma. It's amazing. However, the service wasn't that good. I think I was in a weird area where there was one server who was serving everyone in my area apart from me, and then my server was serving another area and me. So I kind of got overlooked. Like, none of my drinks were ever refilled. She didn't kind of ever check in. And what's interesting at Boma is they do have some vegan options on the buffet, but what they really are amazing in is they will cook extra things for you. So you can get stuff like babuti, vegan sausage, there's a tofu scramble, the allergy Mickey waffles. And because I'd been there before, I knew there were other things you could have. Now, when I sat down, I did let her know I was vegan. The first time I went, the server then went and ordered all of those things for me and brought them out. This server didn't. She was like, okay, fine. So I went up. After a while, I found a different server because I couldn't find my server to ask for some allergy waffles. So she went and got them for me. A while later, I did find my server. I said, I know when I've been previously, like, if you were vegan, there were other things you could order from the chefs. Is it possible to do that? And she went, well, what do you want then? And I was like, because I know what I'd had before, but obviously I don't know if they're still offering that. So instead of kind of being like, oh, these are the things the chef can do, she was just like, well, what do you want? And I was like, and I think the problem is, if you'd never ever been to Boma and you didn't know there was extra things, the things that are on the buffet taste amazing, but there's not much of it that's vegan. So you'd think for the price tag, it's really not cool. Whereas actually there's loads of extra stuff they can bring you. But if you also don't know that you can ask for it, and then if you're asked, well, what do you want? And you don't know what they offer, that can be really awkward. So I was just like, I don't know, what do you have? And then eventually she did bring out the babuti and the sausage and the tofu scramble, and the food was amazing, but the service wasn't great. It took like half an hour to get the bill. Like, I don't know if it was just like an off day, but I think it didn't help because the server that was in my area that wasn't my server was amazing. Like, you'd take like 2 sips of a drink and she's adding more drink, and like if anyone arrived, she would ask, do you have any dietary requirements, allergies, stuff like that. And then if people would say, oh, I'm vegan, she would go, okay, I can get you this, this and this, do you want to order any of it? Like, she was amazing. So I think that really made the service stand out, because where you'd seen the experience everyone else was getting, you were like, oh, this isn't great. But it's one of those things, like, it's probably an off day, and if I went back it would be a completely different experience again. Somewhere else that was really disappointing this trip was Sanaa. I was obsessed with Sanaa my last trip. The bread service, I was like, it lives up to the hype. absolutely incredible. So I went back specifically for the bread service this time, and I didn't like it. The bread was like, they do have the gluten-free bread, and it was similar bread to before. However, I don't remember it being that bad before, whereas this time it was not enjoyable bread. And the sauces tasted a bit different as well. Like the spicy ones were significantly spicier than they were the last time. And again, it could just be certain days, you know, things get made slightly differently. So if I went back, it would be amazing again. But that was one of my biggest disappointment with dining, because I was dreaming about this bread service and then it ended up being not good. So that was not fun. However, I would go back to Snub, but probably order something not the bread service, because I think the menu is really great. Also, Pecco Bill's. Now, I went there twice during the trip because I went to get their veggie rice bowl, and I actually kind of enjoyed it. It is basic, and I do think adding the guacamole made so much difference, but it was a solid option in Magic Kingdom, where quick service food isn't that great. But that was a solid option. The next day they changed the menu, so I thought, okay, I'm gonna go try this new menu. The new vegan option is the masa flatbread, and that was the worst meal I had in the entire trip, to the point where I didn't even finish eating it. I absolutely hated it. Like the flatbread texture was just not the one, and mixed with the toppings on top, in your mouth, it was just really unpleasant. So I was like, this is not the one. Interesting, I've actually seen a lot of people review it since, and they all really liked it. So I don't know if I just had a bad batch, or if it's just my personal preference that those textures weren't for me. I'm typically not a fussy eater whatsoever. So for me to not enjoy something is rare, but that was terrible, and I would never get it again. And it's sad, because I kind of feel like Magic Kingdom is hard for vegans when it comes to quick service options, and in the past kind of few months you've had the vegan bratwurst go away from what's it called? I can't remember the name of the restaurant right now, but that's gone as an option. So, and it's not been replaced, it's just gone. And then like this, I'd prefer the veggie rice bowl. So the fact that that's gone now, I'm like, okay, so I can't eat in Pecco Bill's either. So it means there's even less options in Magic Kingdom now. But, you know, here's what it is. Maybe I had an off day. It was literally when they just started the new menu, so maybe over time there'll be tweaks. Sometimes when a new menu launches, there are like teething problems. But for me, hated it, couldn't eat there. And speaking of Magic Kingdom and its awful food, Casey's. Every single time I go to Casey's, it's not a good experience. And I think it's so iconic. Everyone wants to go there, but every time I'm disappointed. I've never had a good hot dog from Casey's, and this time I actually ordered just the plain plant-based hot dog, but when they brought it out, they'd given me the Chicago style hot dog, and I was like, okay, I mean, I'll try that, fine. The problem with it was the toppings are kind of wet, because it's like a relish and stuff like that. So the bun had completely disintegrated. And so when I first got it as well, the toppings are cold. So the first one I got, everything was cold. The sausage was cold, everything was cold. It was disintegrating. I thought, oh, this is just probably a bad one. So I went back and they gave me a replacement, which is amazing. They are really good at that. If there's anything ever wrong with your food, or it's cold or anything like that, do take it back, because they do want to make you happy. But the second one came out. The sausage was warm, but very quickly went cold because the toppings were cold, but the bun again had disintegrated. So I would say if you're going there, either get the plain one that doesn't have the toppings, or ask for the toppings to be separate, and then you can kind of mix and match. Because yeah, it was just not good, and it's such a shame because it's so iconic, but I've never had a good hot dog from Casey's. And one final mention for a good, let's end on a good note, somewhere that's an amazing hidden gem restaurant is the Turf Club. This is over in Saratoga Springs, which is a DVC resort. So most people won't pop over there, because if you've got hotels like the Grand Floridian, because it's so close to Magic Kingdom, you can easily pop in there to dine. It's great. Saratoga Springs, you either need to get Disney transportation or drive there. And because it's a DVC building, most people that aren't DVC don't ever head over there. It is amazing. One of the best meals I had. Like, service impeccable, food really unique and delicious. Absolutely love the Turf Club. Can't recommend it enough. But this is my little rundown of hopefully some tips and advice for Disney if you are planning to go to Disney World anytime soon. The vlog series is starting. I'm going to have 15 weeks of vlogs so you can see everything I got up to, plus the new things I learned and the new tips I learned that I pass on. So I cannot wait to share that with you. The vlogs are going to be starting the 2nd of October, and what's really exciting is I'm going to be going from 1 video a week to 4 videos a week. So we're going to have a Disney World vlog, 2 short dining reviews, and a planning video a week. Of course, there's going to be loads of new Disney World planning videos about stuff like multipass, but I will also be doing planning videos for Disneyland and Disneyland Paris, so there's a nice mix. But if there are any topics you'd like to know about Disney World specific for a planning video, do let me know. But I hope this has been helpful. It's been really, really nice to be back out there because it is just a dream, and every single day when you're in Disney World is like your best day ever, and everything is so joyful and uplifting, and it's just a dream destination. Like, it was such an incredible trip, and it's so sad to be back, but it's also really nice to have the latest information. And already I've been having people booking the dining service so that I can pass on like tips and advice of which restaurants are great, but then also book for them so that it is not stressful if you're trying to book and you've never booked before and you're worried, or you're just not free exactly when the reservations open and you might miss out. Do get in contact with me about my Disney World dining reservation service. And of course, if you are planning your own trip but you've got burning questions and you'd like advice tailored specifically to you in your holiday, do book in a Zoom call with me because I have all the latest information now, and particularly stuff like multipass, the best strategy, the best itinerary. Again, I think that worked out really well because I do have days of the weeks where I think parks are better to visit, and it worked out perfectly for me because I was always in the parks that tended to have the shorter wait times. And like, you'd hear like another park and people are like, oh my god, today's been awful, every ride's been over an hour, and I'm like, it's worked out well. So if you'd like all of those expert tips and advice, do get in contact with me. You can find it all on my website, mostmagicalguides.com, but please do come and check out the vlog series. It's where you're going to get all the free tips and advice, and just to see what a magical trip it was. And hopefully it inspires you for things you might want to do during your trip, maybe things you didn't know about, but also just to show you that if you have these planning tips, the difference it makes to the type of trip you have, and the fact that every single time I go, I have literally the most idyllic dream, like it should be on an advert trips. It shows that like, even if you have a little bit of planning, the difference it makes and the edge you get against other people and the way it heightens your experience and enhances everything is incredible. So I hope the vlog series kind of gives you a sample of that and a taste of that, and maybe inspires you for some things you'd like to do. But thank you so much for listening. I know this has been a long episode. We will be going back to guests for the next episode, which is so exciting, but thank you for joining me, and I cannot wait to share the rest of this Disney World trip with you. But thank you for listening once again, and until next time, I hope you have a most magical day. Bye bye.